Hello, welcome to 2023. Welcome to the Cars.co.za YouTube channel. My name is Ciro De Siena and I am driving a brand new car. Well, I drive a lot of brand new cars, but this is an entirely new model. It is the Haval Jolion Hybrid. That's pretty cool. And before we get into this review, go and check out Cars.co.za's new app. I mean, we've always had an app, but now we've completely refreshed it and redesigned it. It's completely free. It's been downloaded. Well, the last one was downloaded over 2 million times across all the app stores. It's a hugely popular app. It's the best way to search for your new car and get new car specs and pricing. Right, here we go. A thorough review of the new Haval Jolion Hybrid. Dream, search, drive. Cars.co.za.
Who am I?
Whoever you are, with budget you could save $420 per month.
So what I thought we'd do this morning is, while I'm talking to you about the car, I will simultaneously do an economy test. So this morning, when we were tracking this car in the nice early sunlight through the streets of Cape Town, I achieved an average of 6.3 liters to the 100, but I didn't have it in economy mode. I didn't have the aggressive regen function on, and I didn't have it in single pedal driving mode, all of which should improve the economy. Now, Haval claims 5 liters to the 100 for this car, which is really impressive. It's less than half of what the normal Jolion does. So let's see how close to 5 liters to the 100 we can get while I'm reviewing the car. Right, let's start with the oily bits and the electric bits, because obviously we've got a bit of both happening in this car. So underneath the bonnet is a 1.5 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder motor that produces 70 kilowatts and just under 120 newton meters of torque. Then you've got an electric motor which is quite powerful. That's got 110 kilowatts and about 250 newton meters of torque. And so theoretically, total system output is really impressive: 139 kilowatts and 375 newton meters of torque. Now, the only car which really competes with that in this market is the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid, and this car absolutely wipes the floor with the Corolla Cross in terms of power and torque. In the Corolla Cross, you're getting 90 kilowatts and just 142 newton meters of torque. So 375 to 142. Now, that does come with some caveats, because total system output does not necessarily mean you have access to all of that power. There is a sort of a formula which goes in, and it's not exactly correct to say that this car has that much torque. However, I can say, having driven both of those cars, that this car feels significantly more powerful than the Corolla Cross Hybrid. Now, I was lucky enough to spend a month with the Corolla Cross Hybrid. Toyota gave me one for a month, and so I'm quite intimately acquainted with that car. And the Corolla Cross is particularly good and particularly efficient around the city. Now, on a similar urban route through the streets of Cape Town, which are pretty slow moving, if you're not familiar with this downtown area, you can't really get up to too much speed. On a similar route in the Corolla Cross Hybrid, I averaged 3.8 liters to the 100, which was absolutely remarkable. Now, I have a feeling we're not going to get near that in this car. However, one of the big differences, I think, is that you've got way more power and torque here, which makes this car a lot easier to drive, quite a bit more pleasant to drive, and it will be way better on the highway. The Corolla Cross really does feel a bit underpowered when you're out at freeway speeds and when you're trying to overtake at freeway speeds. This car does have a particularly loud indicator. So one of the lovely things about hybrid is the driving experience in the city is really pleasant. So because you're going at quite slow speed, you have the full benefit of the electric drivetrain. So I'm up to about 40 k's an hour now, and the ICE motor did kick in, but it was literally imperceptible. I could not feel when we went from full electric to ICE powered. That was really impressive. Wow, they really have tuned that very, very nicely. And generally the experience of driving the car is very smooth. There's this clever dual CVT arrangement happening underneath here. And also what's quite pleasant about a hybrid is when you're sitting at a traffic light, you are not burning any fuel, obviously. So there's a little green light there which says EV, so I'm in EV mode, and off we go. And let's see what speed we get to in full EV mode. So it depends on throttle application and how much work the engine has to do. We're still in EV, 36 k's an hour. It's quite nice, not using any fuel. Can I change lanes without killing a 60/60 driver? Yes, good. 0.0 liters to the 100 consumption, still in EV. So there's a 1.6 kilowatt hour battery under the boot at the back there. A little bit of a downside is that you lose boot height, and you also don't get a spare wheel. So I think some South Africans might have a bit of an issue with that. But I'm still in EV. We're still going here. The overall consumption is dropping. We're now at 5.9 liters to the 100. This is a really nice driving experience. And because the electric motor is so powerful, I'm still in EV and I'm about to hit 50 k's an hour. See, now this is where the Corolla Cross is definitely outperformed by this Jolion Hybrid. I'm over 50 k's an hour now. I'm still in EV, and I can guarantee the Corolla Cross would have the ICE would have kicked in already by now. Just that whole stretch in EV. That was pretty cool. Still in EV. There we go. Now the ICE is on. I mean, did you even hear that? There's no vibration. There's no indication. There's nothing to tell your brain that you're now in ICE. But if I put my foot down, okay, there's a little bit of a drone, but it's nice and well subdued and well insulated. It's definitely better insulated than the Corolla Cross Hybrid. Pretty impressed by this thing, actually. Initial impressions are good. I can quite confidently say that this is a nicer car to drive than the Corolla Cross. It's nicer to commute in, it's nicer out on the highway, but it's not as efficient. And I think that stands to reason. You've got like 3 times as much power here. It's never going to be as efficient. So if you're trying to make your mind up between these two cars, you've sort of got a choice between a really excellent driving experience with less efficiency and a slightly less refined driving experience and less powerful motor in the Corolla Cross, but a bit more efficient. So I'm sure at this point now you are very interested in the pricing of this vehicle, and there are 2 variants for you to choose from. There's the higher spec S, which comes in at $579, but you can get this, the lower spec not S version, for $549. Now that does make it quite a bit more expensive than the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid. The XR version, the higher spec, comes in at $480 with the Corolla Cross Hybrid. Now, this is slightly better spec car, but I think really what's happening here is that Toyota have managed, because of the local production, to get the pricing down a bit, whereas Haval is obviously just being hit with all of the import duties and taxes that the SA government can throw at them. So in Australia, for instance, this car sells for about the equivalent of about 420,000 Rand, and it has way more spec in Australia as well. So we get a little bit cheated here, unfortunately, in this market, but I think we can all confidently blame the government for that. welcome to the cabin of this new Haval Jolion. Now I'm driving the luxury spec, and as mentioned there is an S spec, higher spec, and I'll take you through the difference between the two shortly. But let's begin with the key. It is quite a nice key, decently weighted. Yeah, I think you'll be pretty pleased with that. There's lots of space for the key to go as well. You got some space for your phone over here. That's actually quite nice, quite a nice touch. Now, in the S model, you'd get a wireless charging pad, but in here you get something that looks like a wireless charging pad, but isn't a wireless charging pad. It's actually gives you a space to get your charger through from the USB-A ports down there, and then you can easily plug your phone in. So it's a little bit of a workaround to keep the costs down. I haven't test driven it, but I assume you could make that work for yourself. Because the transmission is drive-by-wire, you've now got all the space underneath here, which is kind of cool and quite unique. And they've also put some connectivity options. So you've got two USB type A ports and a 12 volt, which is really useful. And then you do have one more USB up here for your dash cam. Two drinks holders, one a little bit larger than the other. Got a nice big center bin in there. That's pretty useful. And overall, this car is not allowed to look or feel as fancy as its big brother, the H6, but in many ways it does feel like a very premium car, especially when you compare it to some of the other cars in the segment. I quite like the stitching up here, for instance, and this modern touchscreen as well looks the part. Now, as you can see, there's very few buttons. These are just some shortcuts for the air conditioning, which is quite useful. So just one touch to get the air conditioning on. And then some of the aspects of the infotainment system are quite well thought through. So as I mentioned, this car has driving modes, and to get to them, all you need to do is just swipe left from the screen. Then you've got a volume button and you have your driving modes, one of which is snow field, which we probably don't need in South Africa. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and yeah, you just need to fiddle a bit to get through all the settings. One of my favorite settings is the new energy setting. And then you go to single pedal switch, and it says under single pedal the driver is able to make the vehicle speed up, sliding, speed down, stop with only the acceleration pedal. Very important. Read that thoroughly when you get your car. Right, over to the instrument cluster and the steering wheel of this car. Now, this is pretty much the one complaint I have about this interior, and that is that the steering column only adjusts for rake. It doesn't adjust for reach, and so I found it a little bit difficult to find my ideal driving position. I'm not sure why they omitted that. Maybe it's a design piece from under the bonnet that they had to accommodate for, but there we have it. That's the situation in the cabin. Fully digital instrument cluster. You play around with your controls over here, so you can see the energy of the vehicle. You've got your speed there, your fuel consumption, etc., etc. Nothing wrong with that. All pretty straightforward. There's your range, quite good range on the car. And then you use the controls on the left-hand side here to move through some of the infotainment system. So you don't necessarily need to touch. You can actually scroll through things using the buttons over here. And I actually quite like that. This makes sort of ergonomic sense to me. It really does. Electric windows all round, power mirrors which also fold in as well, automatic lights, automatic windscreen wipers, and then the piece de la resistance, a massive panoramic roof. So if you're a sunroof lover, you should be fully satisfied with that, I think. I don't like sunroofs. You just get sunburnt in a very specific place. In terms of your seat design and comfort, I really like the design. It's similar to the H6 GT actually, and the leatherette feels pretty good. Maybe not the most convincing leatherette, but I think it'll pass. In terms of your actual comfort, I'd say maybe a 7 out of 10. If like 1 is a park bench and 10 is your grandfather's lazy boy at his holiday house, yeah, probably about a 7. And you do have electric adjustment for the driver's seat, but not for the passenger. But a small complaint would be that the bit where your butt goes, you can't angle it. So it's a little leaning to the front, if that makes sense. But yeah, not a deal breaker. It's okay. Now, as mentioned, there's a 30,000 Rand price difference between the two variants, and that is largely made up of the active safety and cruise control systems, which have been stripped out of this model to bring the price down. So your lane center keeping, lane keep assist, The active cruise control, the high beam assist, that's all gone from this model. You'll get that in the super luxury, but you'll have to spend 30,000 Rand more. And no matter which variant you buy, however, you will get a 5-year 60,000 kilometer service plan and a 5-year 100,000 kilometer warranty. Introducing my knees. You may have never seen these before because I hate wearing shorts on camera. I think it looks ridiculous, but it's 32 degrees today and I can't work in these conditions. I had to put shorts on. Anyway, and the reason why there's a cable coming out of there and going towards my crotch area is because I forgot to switch off the sound equipment this morning. And so we're charging it while I'm shooting. Anyway, welcome to the back seat. Not bad back here. Actually, comfort is pretty good. I would say adults and kids would be comfy enough, good enough headroom. Look how much knee room there is. That's my driving position. So yeah, adults and kids over 6 foot, I think will be good in here. 1.8 meters or so for those who are obsessed with measuring people in metric. Isofix on both sides. You've got a center console here with 2 drinks holders, 2 air vents, but no temperature control, just a bit of air coming through from the front, and 2 USB type A ports. But what's really nice about this, because it's front wheel drive, look how nice and flat the floor is. So you can really get into quite a comfy position back here. Yeah, that's pretty good. The boot. Now, on this channel for many years, we have performed a very scientific cooler box test in a bid to provide you, our viewer, with incredibly valuable consumer advice. And over the years, I've had very few failures of the cooler box test, but I can tell you now, this is going to be a fail. Look at that. Not even close. I mean, maybe if you lie the cooler box down, but that's not very practical, is it? Then you can get that in, and that just illustrates how shallow this boot is. And the reason it's like this is because the battery for the hybrid system has to go somewhere, and so they put it sort of around here, and that also means that you lose the space for a spare tire, and so you get this sort of aquarium pump thing and some tire weld, and that should help you get to your destination safely if you do get a puncture. But wow, that is a particularly impractical boot, especially considering that the normal Jolion actually has a really usable boot and the rest of the car is actually quite large and quite spacious. So the downside of all this really great hybrid tech is that you do lose some of the practicality that you might want from an SUV. Of course, this does come out and then you can fold the seats down in a 60-40 split. So let me show you what that looks like quickly. I haven't done this before, and I usually do this for your entertainment. Ah, there we go, that was fairly simple. And then pull that tab there, pull that tab there. And then you get an almost completely flat load area, and that's over 1,000 liters of space. So that is pretty practical and what you would expect from an SUV if you don't need passengers to sit in those back seats. Right, a little highway stretch, although this is only an 80 zone, but let's see how it performs. Lovely smooth power delivery. That 2-stage CVT really does do what it says on the box. Quite clever. Haven't heard of another hybrid with a dual CVT. Very smart. So efficiency was down to 5.8, creeping up a little bit now as we speed up. Hybrids are sort of the opposite of normal ICE cars, where they perform way better in city settings and slower settings than they do out on the highway. So your consumption does increase a little bit. But that is not too far off the claim of an average of 5 liters to the 100. Now, my long-term average when I drove the Corolla Cross was 5.4 liters to the 100, and on highway drives it was 6.1. So we're not too far off here actually. But an important thing to note is that if you do pick up one of these, it does make a difference which mode you're in. So you've got to put it in economy, even though you can be in sport if you like, but that's pretty pointless in a car like this. Got to put it in economy, crank the regen up and put it into single pedal driving. And single pedal driving is great. I mean, that's the experience you get out of an EV as well. I really quite like it. No, overall, I am particularly impressed by this car. I mean, there's a couple of niggles. The fact that the steering wheel doesn't adjust for reach is quite annoying. So I haven't really been able to find my perfect driving position. That's a bit of a small downside to the cabin design, unfortunately. But as a commuter car, as a comfortable, relatively compact SUV that's relatively luxurious inside and comes in at a fairly wallet-friendly price. I mean, it's obviously a fair bit more expensive than the competition. And I wish there was more competition for it, because many manufacturers have hybrids in this segment of the market, but they just haven't brought them to South Africa. So really, this is a two-horse race. And as mentioned, the Corolla Cross has pros and cons. This has pros and cons. But if you ask me which one I wanted to drive every day, I think it would be this. Really quite like this, actually. Are you busy trying to decide between 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars, 5 cars, 6 cars? We have an excellent compare tool on our site which will help you make sense of all the different pricing and all the different specs. You'll find it on our main site as well as in our app. It's super slick, it's easy to use, it's highly detailed, it's constantly updated with the latest information and pricing, and I can guarantee you it'll make your life a ton easier. Check it out on our website, link in the description below.
Get insurance that pays out faster than the word Archie. Budget, the official insurer of good South Africans.
Cars.co.za.